We want to talk about the potential merger between the LGFA, the Camogie Association, and the GAA, and I'm delighted to welcome Gary Brennan to the show. Gary's written a very thoughtful, interesting, thought-provoking piece in The Examiner, which we'll tweet a link to, and you should check it out. It's just a very interesting perspective, Gary, that we thought today would be a good day, International Women's Day, to have a chat to you about. How are you getting on?
I'm good, Ger. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, people will know you as a Clare footballer and a hurler with Ballier. But you're also married to a Camogie player and had a first-hand view of the differences between the difficulties that Camogie players at intercounty level and footballers at intercounty level have.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't have to look too far for inspiration for that piece, I suppose, that you mentioned. My wife, Niamh, played Camogie with Limerick senior for, I could miss quote here, 15, if not 16 years, I think. She was playing since she was 15 years of age, I think, and never officially retired, but isn't currently playing senior Camogie with Limerick, I put it that way. So I suppose I had a very clear insight into how our lifestyles differed. And I often say that I didn't really train fully until I met Niamh. She showed me what preparation and training is really about. So I suppose I could just see the allowances or what we were afforded as male players was so much, things were so much easier for us than they were for our female counterparts. And, you know, the piece, I suppose, wasn't me trying to say that what I do here in St. Flannan's or what we do in Clare is perfect or anything like that. It was kind of a reflection piece for us all to maybe just take a step back and consider and think about what it's like to be on the other side of the fence, you know, and that was kind of the motivation for it. And as I say, it was very easy for me to see that, just looking at Niamh at home and how she used to prepare, and I suppose what challenges she had to overcome compared to what I had to overcome. Can
you give us some examples? What was the most striking stuff as you would have gone along and kind of it slowly dawns on you, ooh, my life's a bit easier than this, I don't have to do all that?
Yeah, well, just from day to day, I suppose, like, you know, if you took a typical training week, so if we had to do a gym session on a Monday, we probably had access, or we met at a couple of different slots at the gym, the county gym that we had for Clare. Whereas for Niamh's team, they were probably looking to try and book a 1 hour slot. They had to be there at that particular time. They had to travel to do it. You know, then training pitches, you know, on a Wednesday night, we had our dressing rooms, our pitch, everything laid on for us, whereas their team, they might have been waiting until the last minute to try and get a pitch. That pitch might have been pulled sometime in the afternoon, and they have to go and find another pitch, or maybe not even a pitch, maybe train somewhere on the back of a pitch somewhere with very poor light, may not have dressing rooms, so no shower after training, you know, whereas we can have the shower, sit down, have a bit to eat, have a chat with the lads and head away. So even from that social side, I suppose it's far easier for male players most of the time. And, you know, I'm not saying that every male player has it really easy and every female player has it really tough. There are challenges for both in different situations. But, you know, there are some of the examples. Meals after training, mileage rate. I mean, some of the mileage Niamh would have been putting up in the car was mad. And no expenses for it, you know, compared to male players getting 50 or sometimes 60 cents a mile. You know, nutritional support, psychological support, things like that, you know, I think I would have seen for Niamh's team, for Limerick Camogie in later years, but not to the same extent that we would have had as male players. So it's just, you know, gear, another thing. You know, and I actually think that the gear that we get as male players is far too much. I don't think we need half the gear. We're getting a gear bag full of gear every year. There's just no need for it all. But, you know, a lot of the gear maybe that they would have gotten with Limerick Camogie, they might have had to do their own fundraising or go out and source themselves or things like that. So just, I suppose, where I was able to go and concentrate on my own playing and my own training, for Niamh and for many of our counterparts, they had a lot of other things to consider as well before they could even think about training and playing.
Obviously, the contrast there is striking when you compare the experience that she's had as a Limerick Camogie player and say the experiences of the Limerick hurlers over the last little while and how well resourced they have been. That kind of makes the whole thing more striking, I'd suspect.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I suppose there's possibly an argument that the Limerick hurlers maybe are better resourced than a lot of other male counties too, and that is something that happens amongst, even if we have a merger here, which we hopefully will have, that won't stop some teams being resourced better than others, and I suppose that's not what I'm striving for, what I'd like to see, but I would like to see a basic level, a minimum requirement for all teams, male or female. Because there's always going to be those imbalances or those differences between counties, or some counties are going to employ a system that allows them to provide more resources for their teams or provide them in a different way. And that's not necessarily the worst thing, but I suppose just having a minimum standard for all players, be they male or female, and having the same opportunities to focus on playing and training is what I'd like to see.
You're a teacher in St. Flannan's, and you've worked with the girls' teams there as well. So, there's a generation coming through that hopefully won't experience what your wife experienced, and that there's a generation of lads coming through who won't experience what you saw, which was some kind of, you didn't have a sense of privilege about it, but you were aware of the fact that it was privileged, and that's what needs to happen. But it really definitely, I know we keep saying that, this is actually happening already at club level, and it's being driven by the clubs and it's being driven by the grassroots, but it does need the top of the organisation to say, right, we've caught up with you all, and this is how it's going to be, and this merger is happening, here's how it's going to work, and we have full equality now. There's no ifs, ands or buts about it.
Yeah, it needs a statement of intent, and for all the excellent work that is happening in clubs around the country, following a one club model, and Neve's club actually would be one of those, where all teams participate under the same code and same name, same colour, same name, and share resources. But it's a hand in Limerick. But for all of that good work, there still are separate organisations, and if the GAA wanted at any stage, they could make things more, difficult for the Camogie teams or the ladies football teams in that club. Or in any of those clubs that are doing that. So I think it's important that just from a basic level, the structure is right to start with. Make it all the one organisation. You mentioned in school there, as part of the new Leaving Cert PE curriculum, we were just having a discussion with, as it so happens, my class of Leaving Cert is all boys, which is a rare thing now in St. Flannan's here. We're a mixed school. But I have 19 boys in the class. And I suppose just trying to get them to see it from other people's perspective as well, and from a female player's perspective, and things that, I had a different perspective, but I'd readily admit that I didn't always have a good insight into what it was like for a female player. So, and I know Joanna Reardon wrote an excellent piece and spoke very well last year about how it shouldn't take for males to have an insight into female sport for them to start speaking up. But, unfortunately, I maybe wasn't as aware as I should have been beforehand, but now I am, and I suppose I'd like to try and contribute to the discussion some bit. And if I can make some male players more aware of what it's like for a female player, well, then maybe that will help progress the discussion and help bring somewhat more balance to it. And I think that's important, that we're teaching guys and girls that at 14, 15, 16 and younger even, rather than waiting until they're adults and maybe they have a bit more insight. So, I would just like to see a case where an 8 or 9 year old goes down to the club, or 6 or 7, whatever age they're starting now, and they're all part of the one body, rather than immediately being separated into, well, that's the Camogie group over there, that's the hurling team over there. But they are all one club and one unit and working together, I suppose, in one direction.
Yeah, because it can only lead to a flowering of the organisation in a multitude of different ways. Like it's actually quite exciting when you think about what the end of this process is going to be. But there's a
big time. I mean, if you talk about the sharing of resources that could happen. I mean, if you even look at the efficiency of use of resources, like if you looked at, for example, in Clare here, the Clare men's footballers, the hurlers, the ladies footballers and the Camogie team, they're probably all, for example, employing a different strength and conditioning coach, employing different physios, potentially different nutritionists. I mean, there's huge opportunity there for centralising that, having a core team who's responsible for the performance of all the inter-county teams in the county, and maybe having different layers within that or different groups within that would work with the individual teams. But I just think it could be far more efficient and work far better for everyone, not just for ladies football or camogie.
And then you can see that being a resource that clubs can tap into as
exactly.
and when it becomes appropriate. So what do you actually think is the main barrier to this? Because everybody is making the right noises, and yet I'm not quite sure what the roadmap is for it to happen.
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that question, Ger, to be honest with you. I know that I did have conversation with Eoin O'Farrell when he was president of the GAA and we were on the International Rules Tour, and at the time he told me that this was the one thing he would like to have achieved more than anything. That was back in 2017, I think, before he left office. So I know it's something that I suppose has been wanted from different quarters at different stages. Maybe there's been some hesitancy from some of the female organisations in that they maybe feel that their rights and that the deal mightn't work out to their benefit, and that's an understandable concern. I think it's important that if we are looking at a merger, that it's a very clear discussion, that we look at how this will work best for everyone, so there's probably been a bit of hesitancy and a bit of concern there, but I think it's striking that the ladies football have they passed the motion at the weekend that the GPA had put forward, or a similar motion, to the GPA one. They I think edited the Galway motion that had been proposed, so it reflected the same wording as the GPA motion to GAA Congress. So, and the Camogie Association have publicly committed that they will back it as well. So I think now we're starting to see more alignment in the thinking, and I think that more is a commitment to prioritise it. So I suppose I'd be watching with interest to see what that means and what that leads to. But at the very least, there's a commitment now from all codes and all organisations to start working on this and see what it might look like for everyone going forward.
We're very wedded to symbols and stuff and tradition in Ireland, and sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. The name seems to be something that might be up for grabs. Is that important or not? I can't decide if the new organisation is going to be something which has a different name. It doesn't feel like it really matters, but it might for a lot of people.
I'm probably the wrong person to ask there, because I'd just be like, look, if it is a new name, it is a new name. What about it? If it means a better future for everyone, then a new name, so be it. But that may be more important to some other people. So again, that's something that would have to be included in the conversation, and just see, I suppose, how much of a barrier is it going to be if a name is stopping the combination of all three organisations. I think we're in trouble. I think it'll be very, very hard to iron out the other issues that will arise as this happens, because this won't happen overnight and won't happen quickly. There'll be plenty of complications along the way, I'm sure, but I would certainly hope that a name wouldn't be top of that list.
Gary, when you're speaking like this and thinking about this, does any of your own experience come into it? And I mean that in the sense of being a footballer in what would traditionally be seen as a hurling county. Was there challenges that you guys had to overcome to get to a level where you were trying to look at the last eight consistently in whatever it was, the 2014, 2015, 2016 direction?
Just lost the middle of your question there, Owen, but I think if I took it right, it's just that to compare how my experiences maybe and trying to strive for better.
Yeah.
Might compare to, I suppose, the female players. I'm not sure if that was exactly what you said, but I'd be hesitant to...
Particularly as a footballer in Clare,
Yeah, and I won't lie that thought crossed my mind, I suppose, that we were often the poor relation in the county, or seen as the poor relation, I should say, compared to the hurlers. But, I'd hesitate even to say that, because it's completely unfair for me to compare what it was like for me as a male Gaelic footballer to what it is like for a female player, because even though we may not have gotten everything that the hurlers got at times, or we mightn't get the same support. It's still a different world completely to what it's like for a female player. So, look, maybe that would have given me some small bit of insight, but I don't think it's anything compared to what female players are dealing with day to day.
Yeah, we like, there will be misogyny that we need to talk about and counteract as this change happens. There will be dinosaurs and clubs who will refuse to give the main pitch to the women's teams because they've never had it before, and that is maybe an unspoken part of this, is that like we can't tolerate those attitudes anymore. We've kind of probably turned a blind eye to it in the past, and when the stories come out from the women's teams, everybody is shocked at the stories, but then nothing actually happens in the aftermath of that. What we're saying is it's going to be codified that there's equality. When the senior team needs the main pitch, the senior team gets the main pitch, not the under 14 boys team over the women's team, the way it would be at the moment. And I'm not sure that everybody around the country is just ready for that yet. And I mean, tough shit really, but they're the stories that we have to listen, take on board, and then move past.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. That's the day-to-day barrier, like, that will be struck. And as I say, I'm not claiming to be perfect. Like, this happens in clubs up and down the country all the time. And even in our own club last year, I was coaching an under-15 team, and the senior camogie team were due to come on the pitch after us. Now, I think the senior camogie team thought I was trying to take over the pitch at the time, but I was very much intending to be finished in time for their session. But there's that immediate kind of fear that because it's happened before, well, the pitch is going to be taken on us, or we're supposed to have this pitch and we're not getting it when we should. So there just needs to be clear communication and clear. I suppose it's going to take direction, and it's going to take good leadership at the top of each club, but also that all bodies recognise that if the senior camogie team are due to train and the senior camogie team are committing and are bringing numbers to training, that they deserve to have the pitch as good as the senior hurling team would or the senior football team would, and it's as you say, it's going to take a change in attitude. It's going to take a change in thinking for people, which won't happen quickly. But I've seen it in Eve's Club in a hand there, where they still mightn't always have the top pitch or the main pitch, but they've won a county championship since the men have won a county championship, and they got fantastic support in the club, and a lot of the male players were there supporting them on the day and throughout the process. So I think it's as things like that happen, I think more and more clubs will start to buy in, and more people will start to see the benefit of it and follow that lead, I suppose.
Yeah, it'll be transformative. I mean, that's the as I said, at the end of this process, something magical is going to happen, where you have one of the most important cultural and grassroots organisations in the country recognising the power to be an agent of change. I do want to briefly ask you to put on your hurling and football hats at the moment. Do you consider yourself a hurler or a footballer now, considering the late flowering of your career as a club hurler, as what a lot of people would know you as for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'm very much a football man still. Yeah, no, my home club is actually hurling in Ballyea, so I played hurling all the way up along, but I suppose we only really saw success in the last 7 or 8 years at senior level. So, no, I'm still very much a football man. I'm involved in football here in the school, and at the moment, I haven't even gone back club hurling this year. I'm just club football at the moment. We had a little baby boy just over 3 months ago, so he's keeping us busy at the moment. So club hurling will go on the back burner before football will go on the back burner.
Okay, fair enough. That is a definite identifier. Tommy was telling us we need to ask you about Shane Meehan, who is also a dual star. He's flying for the hurlers, but captain the minor footballer, still only 19, so already getting rave reviews. Where's he going to end up, do you think?
Shane looks... Just lost you there for a second again, Ger. Sorry, but Shane is a class act. And I suppose I saw him first playing with the Clare minor footballers, as you say. And you're looking to go to a match, and you want to see the most exciting players. You want to see the skills of the game being displayed.
We've just lost the line to St. Flannan's there this morning, but sure, look, we were nearly finished anyway, so we'll say thanks very much to Gary Brennan for his contribution this morning. You should read that piece in the Examiner. It's definitely thought-provoking, and really the merger just needs to happen. They need to tell everybody what they're going to do, have some consultations about what the outcomes need to be, and then get on with it and say, here's how we're going to audit as it goes along, here's how we're going to make sure that it's successful. Here's a hotline for anybody who wants to report misogynistic dinosaurs. And
it shouldn't be that hard, and as a result of that, it should be something that is noticeable in its change very quickly, and not necessarily overnight, but pretty close to it. Some of these, when you're talking about things that involve common sense, but that can also make a big difference, the change can happen very, very quickly, even though it feels like that there's a lot of hoops to jump through. It kind of feels as if that suits the old narrative that this thing is complicated.
Yeah, I hold no candle for any of the politicians who've ever been in charge of the departments of sport, but reminding everybody about the rules that are in place to get government funding, and in terms of female representation throughout your organisation, not just the tokenistic stuff that you can do at board level. Stop the funding for the RFU, stop the funding for the FAI, stop the funding for the GAA until they get their houses in order when it comes to proper integration and pushing women's sport forward. And in fairness to them, they said they're going to do that.
Yeah.
So time to put up or shut up, everybody.
Yeah, and I don't see why they wouldn't do that. If you're being an unbelievable cynic about it as well. It doesn't make any sense politically for them to not do that. They want to be the face of a positive news story, and this is going to lead to far more positive reflections on Irish sport, you'd like to think, over the next little while.
Yeah, again, potentially transformative for all of these organisations.